My son looked me dead in the eye and said the truck was gone. Traded it for an SUV his wife wanted, my husband's 1987 Ford F-150, the truck where he proposed, where we brought our babies home, where he drew his last breath holding my hand in the driveway. Then my phone rang. The dealership. Their voice was shaking. "Ma'am, you need to come right now. We found something." What they pulled from behind that glove box changed everything. My name is Margaret Hayes, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 72 years old and I've lived in Athens, Georgia for 47 years. This is my story about love, betrayal, and the lengths a husband will go to protect his wife even after death. Before I tell you what happened, I want to know, where are you watching from today? Drop your city and state in the comments. I love knowing I'm not alone in this. June 1976. That's when James Hayes bought that pickup truck brand new off the lot. He was 24 years old working construction, and he saved every penny for 2 years to afford it. Forest green with a white stripe down the side, manual transmission, AM radio that only picked up 2 stations, and one of them was mostly static. I remember the day he drove it home for the first time. He was so proud. Spent the entire first week just washing it, waxing it, checking every little detail. His friends teased him. "It's just a truck, James." But it wasn't just a truck to him. It was proof that hard work paid off. It was the first major thing he'd ever bought with his own money. He drove that truck to my parents' house on our 3rd date. I was 22, working as a secretary at the courthouse. I'd grown up watching my mother settle for less. So when James showed up that Sunday afternoon and spent 3 hours helping my father fix the porch steps without being asked, without expecting anything in return, I knew he was different. My mother pulled me into the kitchen while they were working. She had flour on her hands from making biscuits. "That's a man who shows up, Margaret. That's a man who does what needs doing without being told. Don't let him get away." I didn't. 6 months later, on a cool October evening, James picked me up in that truck. He seemed nervous, kept checking his pocket. We drove up to Brasstown Bald, the highest point in Georgia. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink I'd never seen before. He spread a blanket in the truck bed. We sat there watching the sunset. Then he pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was his grandmother's ring, simple gold band with a small diamond. "Maggie," he said, and his voice was shaking. "I know I'm not rich. I know I can't give you everything, but I can promise you I'll show up every day. I'll work hard. I'll love you with everything I have. Will you marry me?" I said yes before he finished the question. We got married 3 months later, drove away from the reception in that truck with tin cans tied to the bumper. 2 years later, we brought our son Daniel home from the hospital in that truck. I'll never forget that drive. James drove 5 miles per hour the whole way, both hands gripping the wheel, checking the rearview mirror every few seconds to look at the car seat. "Is he okay?" he kept asking. "Is he breathing okay?" "He's perfect," I kept telling him, just like his father. 3 years later, our daughter Sarah. Same truck, same careful drive home, same worried father checking the mirror every 5 seconds. That truck became part of our family in ways that are hard to explain to people who've never had something like that. It carried Christmas trees home every December. James would take the kids to pick the perfect tree, and they'd argue good-naturedly about which one was best. The truck bed would be covered in pine needles for weeks afterward. It hauled lumber when James built Sarah's playhouse in the backyard. He spent 3 weekends on that project, making trips back and forth to the hardware store in that truck. Daniel riding beside him, learning how to measure and cut and build. It carried furniture when we helped Daniel move into his first apartment after college. Transported groceries every Saturday morning after our weekly trip to the farmer's market. Brought home the dresser we refinished together. The rocking chair James's mother left us. All the pieces of our life. Over the years, friends and neighbors would say, "James, when are you going to get a new truck? This thing is ancient." And he'd smile and pat the hood like it was a faithful dog. "This truck has been good to us," he'd say. "You don't abandon something just because it gets old. You take care of it, and it takes care of you." He lived by that philosophy in everything. When the engine started having trouble at 150,000 miles, he rebuilt it himself in our driveway. Spent every weekend for 2 months getting it right. I'd bring him lemonade while he worked, watch him explain what he was doing to Daniel, who was 15 then and more interested in video games than engines. At 200,000 miles, he rebuilt the transmission, touched up the rust spots, repainted it twice over the years, always that same forest green with the white stripe. That truck wasn't just transportation. It was a testament to James's character. It was proof that things built to last, things taken care of properly, can outlive their expected years. It was our family history on wheels. Every dent had a story. Every scratch was a memory. 3 years ago, in the spring, James started feeling exhausted. Not the normal tired after a long day at work, deep, bone-deep exhaustion that sleep couldn't fix. "I'm just getting old, Maggie," he'd say when I worried. But I knew something was wrong. After 44 years of marriage, you know your husband's rhythms. You know when something's off. I finally convinced him to see a doctor in July. That appointment led to another, then tests, scans, biopsies, each visit bringing more doctors with more concerned faces. August 15th. I'll never forget that date. Dr. Patterson called us into his office. The way he closed the door, the way he sat down slowly, I knew before he said a word. "Mr. Hayes, I'm sorry. The biopsy results show pancreatic cancer, stage 4. It spread to your liver." The room felt like it was underwater. "How long?" James asked. His voice was steady, but I felt his hand trembling in mine. "With aggressive treatment, perhaps a year. Without it, 6 months, maybe less." James looked at me. "What do you want to do?" That was James. Even facing his own death, he was asking what I wanted. "What do you want?" I asked him back. "I want quality time with you, not quantity time in hospitals feeling sick from chemotherapy." We decided against aggressive treatment. 6 months of really living instead of a year of suffering. James spent those months getting everything in order. He'd always been meticulous, but now he became obsessive about details. He made lists, updated passwords, organized files, made sure every insurance policy was current, every bank account documented, every bill on autopay. "I need to know you'll be taken care of," he'd say over and over. "I need to know everything's handled." But through it all, he never mentioned selling the truck. In fact, he spent more time with it than ever. Every afternoon, if he had the energy, he'd go out to the driveway. Sometimes he'd just sit in it. Sometimes he'd run the engine. Sometimes he'd clean it, even though it didn't need cleaning. One afternoon in November, about 2 months before he died, I found him in the driveway sitting in the driver's seat. The engine was off. He was just sitting there, both hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead like he was seeing something I couldn't. I climbed into the passenger seat beside him. We sat in silence for a few minutes, listening to the wind rustle through the oak tree in our front yard. "Every good thing in my life happened in this truck or because of it," he finally said. His voice was quiet, contemplative. "I drove it to your house to court you, helped your father with those porch steps. I proposed to you from its bed. We brought our babies home in it. We built our whole life around it. It's just a truck, James." "No." He turned to look at me, and his eyes were intense despite the illness ravaging his body. "It's not just a truck. It's us. It's our story. Every mile on this odometer is a mile we traveled together. Every dent, every scratch, every worn spot on this steering wheel is part of our history." He squeezed my hand hard. "When I'm gone, I want you to keep this. Not for Daniel, not for anyone else. For you, Maggie. This truck holds every good memory we made. Promise me you'll keep it. Promise me you won't let anyone pressure you to get rid of it." "I promise," I said. "I'm serious, Maggie." His grip tightened. "Daniel's going to tell you it's impractical, that it's taking up space, that you don't need it. But I'm telling you right now, keep it anyway. This truck is yours. It's part of our love story, and no one has the right to take that from you." I didn't understand the urgency in his voice then. I thought it was just sentiment. emotion from a dying man who knew he was running out of time. Now I know better. He knew exactly what would happen. He was preparing me for a battle I didn't know I'd have to fight. 2 weeks before he passed, James was too weak to walk without help. The cancer had stolen so much from him. He'd lost 40 pounds. Getting from the bedroom to the bathroom left him winded and shaking, but one afternoon he insisted I help him outside. "I need to sit in the truck one more time," he said. "James, you're too weak. Please, Maggie, just one more time." I helped him to his feet. It took us 10 minutes to walk the 30 feet from the front door to the driveway. By the time we got there, he was breathing hard, leaning heavily on me, but he was determined. I opened the passenger door and helped him in. Then I walked around and got in the driver's seat. We sat there for over an hour, didn't talk much, didn't need to. He held my hand, his thumb rubbing circles on my palm like he'd done 10,000 times before over 47 years of marriage. "I love you, Maggie," he said finally. "Everything I did, everything I built, everything I planned for, I did it for you." "I know," I whispered. Tears were streaming down my face. "I love you too." He died 2 weeks later on a Tuesday morning. I was holding his hand when he took his last breath. His last words, barely a whisper, were, "Take care of the truck." At the time, I thought he meant maintain it, keep it running, the way he'd always done. I didn't know he meant something more, something bigger. That afternoon, after the hospice nurse left, after I called the kids, after the funeral home came and took his body, I went outside and sat in that truck for 3 hours. Just sat there, crying, running my hands over the steering wheel James had gripped for 47 years, breathing in the smell of him that still lingered in the upholstery. Engine oil and Old Spice and James. The truck stayed in my driveway after that. I didn't drive it much at first. The grief was too heavy, but I started it every week like James taught me. "An engine needs to run," he always said. "Sitting idle is what kills them." I kept the insurance current, had it serviced every 6 months at the same shop James always used, changed the oil, rotated the tires, replaced the battery when it died. It was my last connection to James, my last physical piece of him, and I maintained it exactly like he would have wanted. In the first year after James died, Daniel asked about the truck maybe 3 or 4 times. "Mom, you're not even using it. It's just sitting there. I could sell it for you. Get you some money." "It's not for sale," I told him every time. He'd sigh, frustrated, but he'd drop it. Back then, he'd still drop it. Then he met Brittany. Daniel was 43 when they started dating. She was 31, 12 years younger. She grew up in Buckhead, the wealthy part of Atlanta. Her father owned a chain of car dealerships across Georgia. Her mother had never worked a day in her life, spent her time on charity boards and country club committees. The first time Daniel brought her to Sunday dinner, I tried so hard to like her. She wore a white pantsuit that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Her nails were perfect, long and French-tipped. Her jewelry was real gold and plenty of it. Even her handbag had a designer logo I recognized from magazine ads. "Mrs. Hayes," she said, shaking my hand with a grip that barely qualified as contact. "Daniel's told me so much about you. Please call me Maggie." Oh, I couldn't. That would be disrespectful. But the way she said it made me feel like she thought calling me by my first name would be beneath her somehow. During dinner, she pushed her pot roast around her plate without eating much. I'd spent all afternoon making it, using James's favorite recipe. "I'm actually mostly plant-based," she finally explained, "but this is nice." Nice. Like it was something quaint she had to endure. After dinner, while Daniel helped me clear the dishes in the kitchen, Brittany wandered around my living room. I watched her from the kitchen doorway, seeing her examine everything with this look on her face. Not quite disgust, but something close to it. Pity, maybe, or condescension. She picked up photos, looked at my furniture, ran her finger along the mantel like she was checking for dust. "Your mother has such a quaint home," she said to Daniel, loud enough for me to hear. "It's very lived in." "I like it," Daniel said, but his voice was defensive in a way I'd never heard before. "Of course you do. It's full of memories. She picked up a photo of James and me from our 30th anniversary. We were standing in front of the truck, both of us smiling, his arm around my shoulders. This is so sweet, very traditional. The way she said traditional made it sound like an insult, like traditional meant backward or outdated or less than. Over the next 6 months, as Daniel and Brittany got more serious, I watched my son change. Or maybe she just brought out parts of him I'd never seen before, parts I didn't want to see. He started dressing differently. Expensive clothes, designer brands, everything had a logo. He traded in his reliable Honda Accord for a BMW. Got a new watch that probably cost more than what James paid for that truck in 1976. Brittany's helping me improve my image, he explained when I commented on it. In her world, professional appearance matters. It's about projecting success. You are successful, I said. You've always been successful. Not like this, Mom. Brittany's family, they operate on a different level. I need to fit in. Their wedding was in April, 2 years after James died. It was at some expensive country club in Atlanta, one of those places with a golf course and a dress code. 300 guests, most of whom I didn't know. Brittany's parents paid for everything, and they made sure everyone knew it. We're so glad we could give our little girl the wedding of her dreams, Brittany's mother said during her toast, as if Daniel was just an accessory to Brittany's special day, just another item on her Pinterest board come to life. After they got married, Daniel's visits to my house became less and less frequent. Always excuses, Brittany's yoga class, her book club, a work event they couldn't miss, couples therapy sessions every Thursday, pottery classes on weekends, wine tastings with her friends from college. We're just really busy building our life together, Mom, Daniel would say when I called. You understand? I did understand. I understood that my son was being slowly pulled away from his family, from me. When they did visit, maybe once every month or two, Brittany had opinions about everything. My furniture was outdated and should be replaced with more contemporary pieces. My kitchen needed renovating with quartz countertops and stainless steel appliances. My garden was overgrown and chaotic instead of curated and intentional. You know, Margaret, she said one Sunday afternoon, using my full name like we weren't family, Daniel could really help you modernize this place. These carpets are probably original to the house, aren't they? And that wallpaper in the bathroom is very 1970s. James and I put that wallpaper up in 1978, I said. Right after Sarah was born. I like it. Oh. She smiled that smile, the one that said she was being patient with someone who didn't know any better. Well, it's certainly you. The truck bothered her most of all. That old pickup is really bringing down your property's aesthetic, she mentioned more than once. Have you considered how it might be affecting your home value? If you ever wanted to sell, I mean, first impressions matter. I'm not selling my house. I'm not saying you should. I'm just saying that vintage vehicles, especially ones that are never driven, can become eyesores. It just sits there, taking up your whole driveway. Don't the neighbors ever complain? The neighbors have known that truck for 40 years. They were at our wedding. They brought casseroles when James died. They don't complain. But she'd planted the seed, and I could see Daniel watering it every time we talked. His questions about the truck became more frequent and more calculated after he married Brittany. Not casual mentions anymore. Planned conversations. Mom, when's the last time you actually drove it? Like, really drove it somewhere? Mom, do you know what classic trucks are selling for these days? Even in good condition, that's a solid $15,000. Mom, that insurance and maintenance, it's got to be costing you money you could use for other things. Each time I said no. Each time he pushed a little harder, always with Brittany's voice in my head saying, practical and reasonable and for the best. Then last October, they stopped visiting altogether. Daniel's calls became shorter, more perfunctory. Just checking in, Mom. Everything okay? Great. Gotta run. I didn't see them for 6 weeks. Didn't hear much from them either, except for a few text messages. Then Daniel called on a Tuesday in November. His voice had that tone, that we need to talk tone that never means anything good. Mom, Brittany and I need to come by on Saturday. We need to talk to you about something important. The way he said it made my stomach drop, made my hands go cold, but I said okay. I spent the rest of that week with a sense of dread I couldn't shake, couldn't sleep properly, couldn't focus on my book club reading, just kept looking out the window at that truck sitting faithful in my driveway where it had been for nearly 50 years. Saturday morning, I cleaned my house even though it didn't need it. Made coffee I knew they wouldn't drink. Made sure I had Brittany's expensive tea. They arrived at 11. Brittany looked perfect as always. Cream cashmere sweater, $300 jeans, heeled boots. Daniel looked uncomfortable, tugging at his collar. "Would you like coffee?" I offered. "We're fine, Mom," Daniel said quickly. Brittany set her designer purse carefully on the floor. She looked at Daniel. He looked at the floor. "What did you need to talk about?" I asked. Daniel cleared his throat. "Mom, we need to talk about Dad's truck." "What about it?" "It's just sitting there. You drive it maybe once every 2 weeks just to keep it running. We're thinking about starting a family soon. We need something with more space. An SUV." The room tilted. "We can't afford a new one," Brittany added. "But that truck has classic value. We found a dealer who'll give us enough for a down payment on a used Range Rover." I stared at my son. "You want to trade your father's truck for a down payment on a Range Rover?" "It's not just any SUV, Margaret," Brittany said. "It's a 2019, certified pre-owned, excellent safety ratings." "I don't care what kind of SUV it is, the answer is no." "Mom, be reasonable." Daniel leaned forward. "You're not using it. And honestly, Mrs. Patterson mentioned. It's becoming an eyesore. Mrs. Patterson has known that truck since before you were born." "Maybe she was just being polite," Brittany said. I stood. "I think you should leave." "Wait," Daniel said. "There's something else." Brittany pulled out her phone. She'd had it ready. This was planned. "Last month we found something." She showed me a photo. The truck's title. In James's name. "The truck is still in Dad's name," Daniel said, "which means it's part of the estate. The will specified that truck goes to me." "Actually," Brittany's voice went sharp, "we reviewed the will carefully. It mentions the house, savings, insurance, but there's no mention of the vehicle." She stood. "We consulted an attorney. According to Georgia probate law, when a vehicle isn't specifically bequeathed, it becomes part of the general estate. Daniel, as executor, has authority to make decisions about estate assets." My legs felt weak. "We're not trying to hurt you," Daniel said. "We need this. Brittany's 31. We want a family. We need a safe vehicle and we can't afford one unless we use the truck." "Then buy a used Honda." "We deserve better than a used Honda," Brittany said, the mask slipping. "We work hard. We deserve nice things. And I deserve to keep the one thing my husband left me that matters." Daniel stood, jaw set, stubborn. "I'm sorry, Mom, but this is happening. I have the legal right, and we need this truck more than you do." "Get out," I said quietly. "Both of you, get out of my house right now." "Mom, out!" They left. I sat for an hour, shaking. Then I went outside to look at the truck, to remind myself it was still there. The late afternoon sun hit the green paint. I opened the door and sat in James's seat. "I won't let them take you," I whispered. But I didn't know how to stop them. Sunday morning, the truck was still there. I felt momentarily relieved. Monday morning, I woke at 7, made coffee, stood at the kitchen window. The driveway was empty. If you're feeling as shocked as I was, hit that subscribe button. Because this story is about to take a turn none of us saw coming. My coffee cup shattered on the floor. I ran outside in my nightgown. The truck was gone. I called Daniel immediately, hands shaking. "Mom, it's 7 in the morning. Where's the truck?" Silence. "Mom, we talked about this. You stole it. You came in the middle of the night and stole your father's truck." "I didn't steal anything. I used the spare key Dad gave me, and I'm the executor, so legally, where is it?" "We took it to the dealership yesterday afternoon. They're processing the trade today. By tomorrow, we'll have our SUV. It's done. Once you calm down, you'll realize this is for the best." The line went dead. For 2 days, I barely functioned. Called Daniel 17 times. Every call went to voicemail. Brittany blocked my number entirely. I called my daughter Sarah in Colorado. She was furious. "Mom, that's theft. We'll fight it. I'll fly home. We'll get a lawyer." But I felt so defeated. I don't know if I have it in me. You promised Dad. Don't let them make you break that promise. Thursday afternoon at 2:30, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Is this Margaret Hayes?" A young woman, nervous. "Yes." "Ma'am, this is Jessica from Classic Auto Traders on Highway 29. You need to come down here right now." My heart pounded. "Is this about the Ford F-150? "Yes, ma'am. We found something. Something your son didn't know was there. You need to see this in person. Come right now, before your son comes back for the SUV. "I'll be there in 15 minutes. I drove 20 over the speed limit the whole way. The Discovery. 17-20-21-30. Classic Auto Traders was tucked between a tire shop and an empty lot. A young woman in coveralls ran out before I parked. "Mrs. Hayes?" "Yes." "I'm Jessica. Come with me, quickly." She led me to the garage at almost a run. There it was. James's truck. Hood up. 3 mechanics surrounding it, looking like they'd seen a ghost. "What's going on?" Jessica guided me to the passenger side. The glove box was completely removed, tools scattered around, the dashboard partially dismantled. "Your son brought this in Tuesday," Jessica explained fast. "Standard procedure. We started processing it. This morning, Tommy was checking the cabin air filter behind the glove box. He noticed it wasn't sitting flush. Thought maybe something had fallen behind it." An older mechanic stepped forward. "Ma'am, I've been working on cars 35 years. I've never seen anything like this." He reached behind the dashboard and pulled out a large manila envelope, sealed with yellowed tape. On the front, in James's handwriting, "For Maggie to be opened when the time is right." My knees gave out. Jessica caught me, helped me sit on the floor. "We didn't open it," Tommy said quickly. "Soon as we saw the name, we called you immediately." My hands shook so badly Jessica helped me tear it open. Inside was a letter, and beneath it, legal documents. I read James's letter, and the tears started immediately. "My dearest Maggie, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and someone tried to take this truck from you. I knew it might happen. Daniel's always been susceptible to pressure. I worried about who he might marry, who might make him forget what matters. This is your protection. First, you'll find a revised will, signed 3 weeks before I died. It specifically states the 1987 Ford F-150 goes to you alone. Cannot be sold or transferred without your consent. I gave the original to Edward Morrison with instructions to keep it sealed unless you needed it. This is your copy. Second, the title. Transferred into your name only. Same day as the revised will. This truck is legally yours. Third, documentation that I paid off our house mortgage 2 months before I died. I cashed in my life insurance early. You needed security more than a death benefit. The death benefit you received was from a second policy you didn't know about. Fourth, and pay attention, 3 years before I got sick, my brother Robert and I bought that commercial property downtown, the strip mall on Broad Street. Robert died 6 months before me. His share defaulted to me. You now own 100% of that property. It's leased to multiple tenants. Payments go to a trust account through Edward's office. Last I checked, $87,000 was there, with $2,300 depositing monthly. I kept this hidden because I wanted you protected, money that was yours alone. I hid it behind the glove box because only 2 people would look, you during maintenance or a mechanic if someone tried to sell the truck without permission. I gambled on human nature, that anyone taking this truck wouldn't tell you first, that they'd do it quietly, and that a good mechanic would inspect thoroughly. I was right, wasn't I? Maggie, you are the strongest person I ever knew. Don't let anyone make you feel small. Don't let anyone take what's yours. You promised to keep this truck. Now you have the power to enforce that promise. I love you, Maggie, until the stars burn out and beyond. All my love, always and forever. James. I sat on that garage floor and cried. Deep, wrenching sobs. Jessica sat beside me, arm around my shoulders. The mechanic stood back respectfully. After a long time, I looked at the documents. Everything James said was there. Revised will, title in my name, mortgage satisfaction, property deed, trust account information, bank statements, all carefully organized. James had thought of everything. Even dying, he'd been protecting me. Your husband loved you very much, Jessica said quietly. He did. He really did. Tommy cleared his throat. Ma'am, your son comes for his SUV tomorrow at noon. We accepted his down payment. What do you want us to do? I stood, feeling stronger than I'd felt since James died. I'm taking these documents to my lawyer right now. Tomorrow at noon, I'll be here when my son arrives. And the truck? The truck is mine, always has been, and I'll be driving it home. Jessica smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. I called Edward Morrison from the parking lot. Margaret? I haven't heard from you in years. Edward, it's about James's truck. Daniel took it. The revised will. I've been waiting for you to call. Come to my office. Now. By 5 o'clock, I had everything. Copies of all documents, notarized and lawyer certified. Edward had called the dealership to confirm. Margaret, what Daniel did could be considered theft. You could press charges. I don't want charges. I want my truck back, and I want him to understand what he did. Tomorrow should be very interesting. I arrived at the dealership at 11:30. Jessica had everything ready. The truck sat prominently in the lot, freshly washed. The SUV Daniel wanted was in the bay, paperwork ready. Edward Morrison arrived with me. We sat in Jessica's office, waiting. At noon exactly, Daniel's Tesla pulled in. He and Brittany got out, both smiling like Christmas morning. Jessica greeted them professionally. Mr. Hayes, we need to discuss your trade. Is there a problem? Daniel's smile faltered. Quite significant. Please come with me. She led them to the office. Daniel's face went white when he saw me. Mom, what are you doing here? Sit down, Daniel. Brittany's eyes narrowed. This is inappropriate. We completed a legal transaction. Sit down, Edward said, his voice carrying 40 years of authority. Both of you. They sat. I placed the documents on the desk. When you took that truck, you made assumptions. You assumed it wasn't specifically bequeathed to me. You assumed you had authority to dispose of it. You assumed I was too old and too tired to fight back. Mom, I'm not finished. My voice was steel. Your father knew you. He knew your weaknesses. He knew you might marry someone who would push you to do wrong things. So he protected me. I slid the revised will across. This revised will, signed 3 weeks before your father died, specifically states the 1987 Ford F-150 belongs to me, not the estate. Me? Cannot be sold or transferred without my express written consent. Brittany grabbed it, scanning. Her face went from confident to pale. That's not possible. You reviewed the primary will, Edward interrupted. Superseded by this revised version, filed with my office and the county clerk. This is legally binding. I slid the title across. This title, in my name, has been for 3 years. Daniel's hands shook. Why didn't you tell me? Because your father instructed me to keep certain protections private. He wanted me secure, with resources you couldn't touch. What resources? Brittany's voice was sharp. I smiled. None of your concern. What is your concern is you conspired to steal property legally and explicitly mine. Edward says I could press charges. Press charges? Daniel's voice cracked. Mom, you can't. I won't. Only because your father loved you despite your flaws, and I won't dishonor his memory by putting his son in jail. However, I stood. Here's what's happening. Jessica? Jessica pulled out paperwork. Mr. Hayes, the truck wasn't legally yours to trade. The transaction is void. Your down payment will be refunded. The SUV remains unsold. But we need that. SUV, Brittany said, voice rising. We told people. I posted it on Instagram. Then figure out how to afford it yourselves. I picked up the documents. The truck is mine, was always mine, will remain mine until I decide otherwise. Daniel looked at me with tears. Mom, I'm sorry. You thought you could bully your elderly mother into giving up the one thing your father left that mattered. You thought I was too weak to fight. I walked toward the door. You were wrong. Margaret, this is ridiculous. Brittany stood, face flushed. That truck is ancient, worthless compared to... The truck, I said, turning back, is worth more than you'll ever understand. It's worth 47 years of marriage. Every memory James and I made, the promise I made to a dying man, and most importantly, the lesson you both needed. I am not someone you can take advantage of. Edward and I walked out together. He handed me the truck keys. You handled that beautifully, Margaret. Thank you, Edward. Your husband was a wise man. I climbed into that old Ford F-150. It smelled like engine oil and old leather and James. The engine turned over perfectly, like it always had. In my rearview mirror, I watched Daniel and Brittany walk to their Tesla. They drove away without looking back. I drove home slowly, taking the long way. Past the park where James proposed, past the hospital where our children were born, past all the places we'd driven together for 47 years. When I pulled into my driveway, Sarah was waiting. She'd flown in that morning. She hugged me tight. Mom, I'm so proud of you. Your father protected me one more time. He loved you so much. I know. I looked at the truck, sitting in its proper place. I know he did. That was 8 months ago. The truck still sits in my driveway. I drive it every Sunday to church, just like James and I used to. Daniel called once, 3 months after. He apologized. It sounded genuine, but I told him I needed time. He hasn't called since. Brittany filed for divorce 2 months ago. Apparently, she married Daniel for his potential, not his reality. The property James left generates enough income that I'm comfortable. I set up a trust for Sarah's children with part of it. Every Saturday morning, I sit in that truck for a while. Sometimes I talk to James. Sometimes I just sit. But I always remember his words. You don't abandon something just because it gets old. He never did, and neither will I.